pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Support.
Support. We have motion and support for minutes approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Now we have time for public comment, and we wish to address the board at this time. Please step forward. Seeing none, let's move on to facilities management.
Good morning. Danny Brown, Director of Facilities. This morning I have the uniform contract for your approval. We sent out packets to 4 different contractors. Currently, Cintas has our contract, has a 4-year contract, and my recommendation would be to go with them again for another 4-year contract.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve a contract with Cintas Uniform Services at a rate of $5.50 per week per man for the next 4 years.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and support for the Cintas Uniform Service contract. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now the Conservation District.
Good morning. I'm
Morning.
Lou Coulter. I'm the director of the Grand Traverse Conservation District. I just have a couple things in addition to our written report. One exciting thing is Steve Largent, our Land Management Services Director, was awarded the Frank Purvis Citizen Planner Award last week at the county banquet, and we're very proud of him, and I think he's well deserving. On the downside, we did, like everybody else, get word from the state that our funding for, our operational funding from the state has been eliminated for the 2010 budget year. Not a huge deal, it was only about $10,000, but it's contributing to a little bit of a deficit that we're having. That's all I have.
Any questions? I have a question. It was on talk last week on the radio about the environmental degradation being caused by the lowering of the Boardman Dam. And I know that you, as a conservation district, are out there maintaining and working on the rivers, the Boardman River, all the time. Have you noticed, what kind of environmental degradation have you noticed? If any.
This discussion was about Boardman Pond, I trust?
Yes, the lowering of the Boardman
Brown
Pond.
Bridge?
Yep.
Well, you know, certainly the habitat has changed out there. You know, there's much less pond area, if you will, much more exposed steep banks. Have you folks been out there lately? I mean, the banks are exposed. Further upstream, like the upper half of the pond, the exposed bottomlands are pretty well vegetated, actually. But further down where there's a little more activity and so forth, the vegetation hasn't taken place. From an environmental degradation standpoint, it's been pretty localized. In my opinion, you know, the sediment hasn't been making it further downstream. It's been contained in the pond. And actually, we're fairly impressed that there hasn't been more sediment movement, if you will. Habitat standpoint, certainly there's less habitat for loons and that sort of thing, warm water fish. They're getting congregated, but it's not a concern to us. Going forward, we're going to have to be, you know, as the dams are removed, the sediment loading and movement is going to be a big issue, and we're going to have to deal with that. But that's what the planning process is for.
Are we losing wetlands out there? Is that? Because that's one.
I guess just my observation, casual observation, I would say certainly. You know, the portions that were over by Ron Elpers, you know, on the other side of on the southwest side of the pond, those were pretty wetland, and now they're upland. And so, yeah, that's probably happening.
okay, so what's happening is just change of environment, more or less.
Right.
It's not necessarily a degradation, but it's a transformation.
Well,
Is that-
ultimately, the goal is to take it to back to where it was before the dams were in place, which was, there was a period of years where where that area was severely degraded during the lumbering era and so forth, but ultimately, it's going to be a very healthy river system.
I noticed you mentioned that you had beavers in the area by the Nature Education Center.
Yeah, it's just downstream from Boardman Dam.
How much of control are we going to have of the beaver population, or if any? I mean, and
How
they're
much of an
affected.
issue
Yeah,
will
because
they be?
it was mentioned that, the river was never really a free-flowing river because of the beaver population, that they would dam it up themselves. That was one issue that people brought up, and that if we wanted to return it to
Well, that-
natural.
You're talking to an administrator and a farmer here.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult to believe that beavers could dam the entire river.
Yeah.
They certainly can dam tributaries and so forth. Maybe they did. These particular beavers, we are dealing with on a regular basis because, they're part of the habitat, they're part of the educational opportunities at the Natural Education Reserve. So we're just keeping at peace with the beavers and keeping the water level at, so it's not flooding trails and that sort of thing. Certainly they do breed and they're going to expand and they're going to move into other areas, but I don't see them.
Damming the river.
Maybe what the person was saying is that over on a watershed basis, there at one point were lots of beavers out there, and they did have lots of dams that did slow flow of water kind of on a cumulative basis, but I don't see them like replacing Sabin Dam,
Okay. All right. That's it for me. Okay, well, thank you, Lou.
You bet, thank you.
And now for the Housing Liaison report.
Good morning, Virginia Coulter. I work for Traverse City Housing Commission.
Good morning.
One thing that I would like to add to my report is that the President signed the extension on Friday of the homebuyer tax credit, and I thought I would just elaborate on that a little bit. I pulled something from the Washington Post on Friday. People buying a home for the first time in 3 years would receive an $8,000 tax credit if they sign a contract by April 30th and close by June 30th. Homeowners who are buying a new primary residence would be eligible for a $6,500 tax credit beginning December 1st if they owned their own home for 5 consecutive years in the previous 8. And the timing is more flexible for military families who have been deployed overseas for 90 days or more in 2008 or 2009. They would have until April 30th, 2011 to sign a contract. And to qualify, the home has to be no more than $800,000. The program also restricts eligibility to individuals who make no more than $125,000 annually and couples who make no more than $225,000 annually. And anyone who collects the tax credit but sells the home within 3 years of buying it must return the refund. So that's a real boost to the real estate community. I happen to be given some data. I happened to receive this from somebody, and an appraiser had put together some numbers that showed that the residential median, it shows the residential median sale prices for the 5 county area statistics, and that we were down 11% between 08 and 09, January to September. And significantly down, and this was sort of a surprise to me, residential with water was down 31%. So, there are foreclosed properties that are being absorbed, and that's certainly part of it. But So, it's a mixed bag. I think, critics have said that, it inflates the house prices, but certainly it's part of the move in the country to, get housing moving, so.
And it sounds like we could use a little inflation in the housing market,
Well,
depending on your perspective.
we happened to get Time Magazine at home, and a couple weeks ago, there was an article that the median home price in the city of Detroit is $8,000. So, things are dire, and we are certainly fortunate in our community to be where we're at, so. Any questions about my report? Sonny?
Jenny, I know that you work with Habitat for Humanity a little bit too. Our Land Bank Authority has dedicated a piece of property on South Airport for them, but we still haven't got any closing as far as I know. We have a land bank meeting next month or next week. Do you have any idea, are they ready to move forward with that project?
I don't know, but I'll ask. I have been talking to the staff at Habitat frequently lately, so.
Well, we had just given them a deadline date that they needed to make a decision one way or the other, or else we were going to try to market that parcel of property. So.
Yeah, I'll try to follow up on that. I know they are a little up in the air over there because they're trying to hire a new director, so.
If you can just let Jean know what you find out, if you find out something. She may already have the answer that I haven't got because I don't have my packet yet. But.
Anything else?
No. Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. Now we have the Road Commission report.
Good morning. Mary Gillis, Road Commission Manager.
Dave Taylor, Road Commissioner.
Good morning.
I've given my report to you. There's a couple things I wanted to add. Michigan Transportation Fund revenues were down $72,000 this month. Not good.
What's the typical number, Mary, so we have a comparison?
Usually this month they run around anywhere from 575 to 650, so it's a good chunk of reduction. The state had an explanation. So far, at this point, not a lot of the road commissions are buying it, but it was a one-time accounting adjustment. They seem to make a lot of those.
And they're always
Did they
down,
ever go
right?
up,
No,
right? Never, no.
not recently, anyway.
Excuse me, Mary, so when you say down 72,000, you mean from like a year ago?
Yes.
What we got in October a year ago?
Right, and actually, it was our November payment. We're paid the first week of the month, and that's for September.
Oh,
So we
okay.
run 2 months behind, so they're saying because, and a lot of it was diesel, and they're saying because the reduction of manufacturing and all the trucking's going out of state, and so they had quite an explanation, but, moving on, and that was still within our budgeted decrease, so at least we're good that way. We hope it doesn't happen again, at least to that extent. Cedar Run Road, we're working on the last of the right-of-way. We've got the last take. We have a couple grading permits to work on still. That one would go to bid later in the winter, that project, and I'm going to be checking with MDOT as far as rescission on the federal funds, because they've had rescissions on all funds that aren't obligated, and technically we aren't obligated until it goes to them and is approved for a bid letting. So we'll be checking on that, but these were 2007 funds that we're finally able to move forward on. Hammond Keystone, we've got 2 right-of-way issues still underway. One is the rail property, and one is the Traverse Bay Christian School. So we're working on the final aspects of those. We expect the arch sections for the bridge at Hammond and Keystone to be delivered this week, and they'll start setting them, and we're going to let the commissioners know we're going to arrange another tour so you can see some of those placed if you're interested. And
So-
also take a
sorry.
look.
I was gonna say, so there's no through traffic as of yet?
No, and we won't have it open until early next June when we complete the project.
That was a target date anyway, right?
Right. As far as funding, some of our stimulus projects, one has already been started. We've been doing, as the weather permits, we've been doing the symbols, heat fuse symbols. But we just had the bid letting for Carlin Road last week, and it came in 13% below engineer's estimate, which is great because now we don't have to have any local match. We had a small local match just to make that whole length. So that's going fine. We also may get some ARA funds from the tribe, so we're waiting to hear. I have a meeting tomorrow with their representative. One item, I'm going to skip down to Road Improvement Committee. That group is now going to the Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee, but something that's interesting in light of the fact that the millages in the townships failed in Acme and East Bay, I just thought I'd mention that I got emails from both of the residents that were quoted in the Record Eagle article this weekend, and they both said to me that they were misquoted completely, so
Can't imagine that.
I don't know if that ever makes the news. So, the fact that they were quoted as saying, "I'm not in favor," not true. One of them said they wouldn't know until they saw what it actually was going to be. And the other said he never told them he was in favor of shifting it to 2012. He thinks it's needed now, so. Other than that, we're still working on the, with the Brownfield Development Authority on a parcel of property over by 3 Mile, and we ran into some issues with it not having any access. So we were trying to negotiate some further easements for access, but we may change the deal a little bit. We've been talking with the Land Conservancy because they want that parcel also. So we may swap and do some other kind of preservation mitigation.
This is the piece that the land bank gave you
Yes.
for, it's
Land
like,
bank.
you were gonna use it for what?
So
Wetland, what were we going to use it for, wetland
Right, we're
mitigation?
gonna
We
use it
didn't
for.
give it to them.
Excuse me.
They purchased it at the tax.
I'm sorry.
The taxes that
Bad
were due.
choice of
It
words,
was not
Sonny.
donated.
Right, and initially, we didn't catch it. One of the easements to access the property had expired. So when we went back and looked at it to do the final land description, we didn't have any access. So we've been working with some abutting property owners to get access and haven't been successful. But at the same time, Gene called me last week and said the Land Conservancy is very interested in it. And when we mitigate a wetland, we have to actually build the wetland, but we can also do preservation of existing wetlands, and they have another large parcel of property. It's a different ratio, but they have a large parcel that we may be able to work a deal with them if we provide them with the parcel we've been working on so far. So we're trying to,
So I guess essentially right now, as you build and widen 3 Mile, you're gonna have to drain some wetland. And so this will mitigate that issue? Is that what you're working on?
right. And the DEQ or DNR likes to see the mitigation take place near the project site or as close as possible to it. So we initially planned on mitigating, building new wetlands, but if this new deal goes through, we'll be able to preserve existing wetlands, which really is less cost to us,
Make everybody happy. then.
hopefully, and so.
From Commissioner's point of view, the Road Commission has already paid for the purchase of this piece of property. Mr. Rokas has already deposited the check.
Okay,
But he said he would,
I'm sorry, it was a bad choice of words.
Hey, any other questions? No?
I had something left, maybe not. Any thoughts on the, why the road millages in East Bay and Acme failed?
Hard for me to say. Some of it might be the economy. Some of it may be, I think a lot of people saw it as the total proposal to pave Holiday Road, that it was going to all be centered on one
It
road.
was just too specific to one problem instead of a general benefit to everybody.
Right, and in fact, if I believe the Record Eagle, the quote from the resident that was opposing it, and she said she'd be fine with the county millage because it benefited the whole countywide system. So,
And I know at some of the East Bay Township meetings that they were very concerned that it was just a Holiday Road issue and it was concentrated by those folks that wanted that, and they didn't, and they were concerned that it was just too targeted, I think.
right,
And I think the economy had a lot to do with it also.
yeah, and I think one thing to take away from this, though, is like, I just ask the commissioners to keep an open mind, because what I experienced or saw in East Bay, I attended the township meeting where the residents went back to the township board when the board didn't put it on the ballot and demanded a right to vote on it. So they were pretty upfront in saying, we don't want you to decide our issues, we want to decide them ourselves. So I thought that was, I mean, it was the best, I thought it was great, a great display of American government in action, so.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. And now we have our Parks and Recreation Director.
Good morning, Jason Jones, Parks and Recreation Director, and
Kim Moore, Aquatic Manager.
I'd like to start off by saying good morning. We're going to start with a monthly report, and things have been going, it's been an interesting time in Parks and Recreation with the addition of Kim. And she's going to talk a little bit about Easling Pool. Some of the changes that we've had as Kim has joined us. She started on October 22nd, and Kayla Condon, who has been working as a recreation technician, ended her tenure with us on the 30th of October. So we've had some changes within our office. Kim's going to talk a little bit about what she's done so far within the Easling Pool.
So far, I've already started our approach to meet our swimming lesson program to be in line with the new Red Cross requirements. So we will have a whole new swimming lesson program to release to the public in January of 2010. Got ahead and started working on guidelines and objectives for an aquatic advisory committee, and have started to use the Lutra report to go ahead and do kind of revamp our pool schedule, make it more user-friendly to the public, and to also be able to provide some more swimming lesson opportunities for the people of the community, and also to kind of pair up with that Lutra report to make it more accessible to the people in the community, so they won't have to wait 10 weeks to sign up for a session. It'll go every 3 to 5 weeks instead.
Well, good. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a good process having Kim come aboard. There's a perception that the Lutra report just collected dust on a shelf. But we've been implementing the Lutra report just as we stated we would, with the hiring of an aquatics manager. Kim and I have sat down and we're trying to take care of basically some of the low-hanging fruit that is going to be an immediate benefit to the pool. And as we move forward, as some of this low-hanging fruit, as there becomes less and less of that, we will be delving deeper into the Lutra report and looking at that as a strategic directive from the Parks and Recreation Commission as well as the Board of Commissioners.
I'll look forward to that. A lot of
So do
these
we.
issues should be resolved.
Kim, when you read the Lutra report and you saw how we were scheduling the use of the pool, from your experience, did you kind of concur that it needed to be changed? Was it pretty typical, or is it, we really needed to make some changes to
No,
that?
we really needed to make some changes to it.
Good. So with your experience, you got some other ideas that kind of make it?
Absolutely,
Yeah. One of the things that we really liked about Kim when we interviewed her was kind of her creativity in involving the community in the pool usage. And, she really did some fun things at her last job to get the community more excited about it and get people interested in swimming. So that was a big thing. So we're really glad you're here, Kim.
Glad to be here.
Hope you are. Okay, good.
Love Michigan.
Okay.
Good. Glad to hear that.
We're a little
Come
mild.
see us.
Of course, it's
Come see us
70 in November.
February.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you prepared for about what is to happen?
We are so excited for the snow. I have 4
Okay.
children, and they are thrilled to have snow. Where we were from, we would maybe get it for a couple days.
Okay, well,
But
there's
you've
there's very
And it
little
would snow
shortage.
like 2 inches, and we would go sledding on our little hills in the front, so we're very excited.
But Kim, before Oregon, you were...
Oregon.
Yes,
Oregon. Oregon.
We're not gone, we're still
Oregon.
here.
Okay.
That's a good one to remember.
Before you were there, okay, you were in
We were in Boise for 2 years and lived in Montana for 5.
so you know snow.
We know snow. My husband and I. It'll be new for the kids.
All right.
Oh, you said that was.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
O'Regan?
For the rest of the report, just wanted to touch on a couple items. The Civic Center, as of October 6th, NMC stopped utilizing our parking lot. As you've heard, they utilize our parking lot, and we were working towards an agreement, a usage agreement with them. They found parking on their own campus, although they have cut a check to us in the amount of $1,650 to utilize the parking spaces for a month and a half. There were about 110 spaces utilized on average per day. So $1,650 is an agreement that we came to with NMC, and we actually should be receiving the check. If we haven't received it, we should receive it this week. The major construction at Twin Lakes is nearing completion. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the agenda. And within the next month, I'll be attending an accessible recreation workshop. This workshop is put on by the Michigan Recreation and Park Association and is part of the Access to Recreation program. One of the benefits of this training will be training on ADA transition plans and how to evaluate our parks, which is going to be part of our next master plan. So that's my monthly report.
Any questions? No? Catch your breath first? Okay.
Are there agenda items we need to go over with, or?
Oh, there's more,
Is
yes.
that coming
Yeah.
up next? Okay.
That's just my monthly report. Staffing plan amendment, Sally's going to be here for that, so,
Sally
behind you.
Behind you.
Sally is here for that. Okay.
all right. Within your packet, there's some information in regards to our lead lifeguard position at the pool. Over the past few years with the Siegel study, with the Lutra report, there's been discussion of eliminating the lead lifeguard position and making that a lifeguard/WSI position, similar to our other 2 full-time lifeguard WSI employees. I suggest, and I've talked with Dennis and Sally in regards to this, eliminating the lead lifeguard position and making that position a lifeguard's WSI position.
And when you
Sally,
say there's
come
a
on.
difference, that's a positive difference? I mean, there'll be more money involved?
There would be less
Less
money
money,
involved.
okay.
Yeah. Currently, the lead lifeguard position makes $2.31 per hour more than
Okay.
a lifeguard WSI position.
I guess that's,
Okay, and this is one of the unionized positions?
Correct.
Okay, so what impact does this have on the union contract?
It does not impact the union contract. This would
Okay,
be management rights to evaluate the staffing and what the needs are.
okay. So what does the lead lifeguard do now that's different from the other 2?
The lead lifeguard has some additional responsibilities that they were supposed to take on in the past. That's historically been taken on by either the other full-time lifeguards, or it's been taken on by the director or the deputy director, or now that we have an aquatics manager, some of that responsibility's been taken on by the aquatics manager.
Okay, what are those duties specifically?
Those duties are doing monthly reports for the Department of Environmental Quality, scheduling events in the pool, scheduling staff in the pool. Do you have the list here? Maintain membership files, locker rentals, and staff schedules, and train guards and instructors, and monitor certification records. Those are all items that are now done by either the aquatic manager, by our departmental secretary. Some of them are done by the lead lifeguard, but in the past, our full-time lifeguard WSIs have also taken on part of that responsibility.
Okay, is there a reason that the lead lifeguard was not doing these duties, or? I mean, if that's part of the job description, wouldn't the person have been doing the duties?
I don't have an answer for that, other than that's the way it's always been done. It was like that before I started with the county, and it's something that's maintained since.
Where even though it's part of the job description, this person wasn't really doing the job?
Correct.
It wasn't, I
That
think.
part of the job.
I don't know why, whether it wasn't practical for the person to do the job, or whether just, it made more sense to spread out the duties. But I know that Tim Schreiner, the previous director, made a recommendation and came to HR years ago and said, this person is not doing all these duties, we're wasting money. And at the time, we made the decision to wait till the Siegel study was done, like we did with so many things. And in fact, when they looked at the job description, even though we're not implementing it now, the Siegel study recommended we eliminate the lead lifeguard position as well.
Because there basically wasn't really any difference between what the lead lifeguard...
No, it was at one time, I believe, Commissioner, but I think that changed, over the years. And then one of the problems we had was, we had the other lifeguards, this is what brought it to my attention before Jason came, we had the other lifeguards coming and saying, hey, we're doing some of these things. We're not being paid for these things.
Significant difference.
And then when we looked at the Lutra report, we said, most of this stuff is either going to be done by clerical staff or it's going to be done by the director herself in terms of the reporting and that kind of stuff. So it really just made no sense to keep it. And it just kind of verified what Tim told us probably 5 years ago.
So do you have a recommendation?
There are three options for a recommendation from this committee.
Well, Jason, let me handle that, okay, please? It's really more of an HR thing.
Yeah.
But we wanted to get it to you so that you had an opportunity to discuss it. But Sally and I discussed it at some length, and we agree that probably the most appropriate thing is just redline the position and freeze the pay. We don't want to downgrade anybody from their pay. So what would happen is then their pay would stay frozen until pay raises equate to that point. And then once they're paid whatever the other lifeguards are paid, then their pay would start going up again.
How long will that take, you think?
Well, depending on the economy and raises, it could take a few years. But, even in the Siegel study, we weren't planning on downgrading anybody's pay. We just freeze it. Because certainly if we downgrade it, the union's going to challenge it because he was being paid at a certain level. Now, you could make the argument you should cut the pay. He's doing the same work as everybody else, but that has not really been, I think, that's not true. We have, on some occasions, reduced people's pay if their job duties substantially changed. Is that not correct?
Right.
Arlene told us that.
Yeah.
But more often than
We've kind of done
not,
all three of these, depending on circumstance.
yeah. But in
That's
this
why I listed all
case,
three options.
because I think we would get a challenge from the union, I think Sally and I believe that the wisest way to go is to freeze the pay.
Chris?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I would like to sincerely apologize for my late arrival, and as you can see, thank you, Chris Kramer, for giving me a message when I wrote the wrong date on my calendar. What I was thinking, or wasn't thinking, is beyond me. But thank you for the voicemail message this morning. I would agree with the county administrator. I think the fairest way is to freeze the individual's pay. I can't think in the last 3 years that I've served as a county commissioner, I can't think of one instance where we've actually reduced someone's pay. So I will make a motion that we freeze the pay of the lead lifeguards and change the position to a full-time lifeguard WSI.
Support.
Okay, we have motion and support. Any further discussion?
Dennis, that means we will in turn amend the staffing plan for this department also to eliminate that lead lifeguard position,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Will that be a separate operation, or are
We
we
do that
handling
through
it in the
LNA,
same
don't we?
thing?
I always get that
This is-
confused.
We do it through here.
This is the staffing plan change.
Okay, so when we approve this, right, this motion to change that position to this, it takes care of the
We'll take care of
staffing
the
plan
Staffing
change?
plan, and then what we do with the pay of that individual.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Yeah, I'm certainly don't support reducing somebody's pay. There's no reason, you're not going to like punish the person or anything, so I'm in favor of the motion. Okay, we have a motion to freeze the current rate of pay, change the title, and move on. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Okay.
Thanks, Sally.
The next item I understand is now basically an information item in regards to the TART trails. Ted Okerstrom and Fred Hoisington have approached both myself and Dennis in regards to the county providing a $3,000 contribution to meet the criteria for a local match for a feasibility study to determine the best way for non-motorized traffic to cross Airport Road at Logan's Landing. There needs to be a $15,000 local total match for this project, $3,000 coming from the city of Traverse City, $3,000 from Garfield Township, $1,000 from Sarah Lee, and $5,000 worth of in-kind donations for research and facilitation for the public process from Fred Hoisington. Fred and Ted will be at the
I think they're
Ways and
going to be at
Means.
Ways and Means.
There'll be Ways and Means to discuss this project, as well as a couple other TART trail-related projects. At the Parks and Rec Commission meeting last week, Parks and Recreation made a motion to support donating an amount not to exceed $3,000 to this project.
Yeah, if I could I make a couple comments? You know, Fred came and talked to me, and Fred's volunteering for TART to do this, Fred and Ted Okerstrom. And at the same time, Michaela's talking to me about another request to start working on the west side of Boardman Lake, you know, which is going to be $100,000 or $150,000 from us.
Just in studies,
No.
to actually do it.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
know, so the Boardman Lake thing we've done in two pieces now, and there's probably one or two more. And every time we bring one to the board at the request of the city, because it's the city, Garfield, and the county board expresses frustration about the fact that, you know, how many of these are we going to see? We never know when they're coming, they're not put in the budget. And it's been, in good years, it wasn't such a big deal, but now it's becoming a bigger deal. So there was that project. Fred was working on this project, and then I had heard Bob had another project. And so I got Bob to come in and meet. First of all, I suggested to Bob, and he totally agreed that he hasn't seen you in a while, and he hasn't even seen the new commissioners in a formal setting, so he's going to come talk to you about, you know, TART. But what I said was that I thought it would be wise for them to, that all these need to be coordinated through TART. You know, when we're seeing these different trail-related requests, that they, you know, we can't be getting them piecemeal one and then a month later see something else.
What you're suggesting is they prioritize what they really want to
They
do.
prioritize and they
bring that to
coordinate.
us. Yeah,
So they're going to
because-
come next week and they're going to talk
Because
to
that
you
was my
about these.
impression here. I mean, I'm a big supporter of TART, but
Study
it's
after
like,
study.
this seems a little pie in the sky to me, because, you know, I mean, we're still trying to figure out how to get people across Grandview Parkway, you know, in the city, and obviously the West Boardman, you know, the West Lake Trail, you know, looks like a high priority. I mean, I guess my first question is, this $15,000 is a match to another grant?
Yeah, they have
Or match of a
15,
grant?
it's a $30,000 project, and in fact, really what they're probably going to look for from you is more like $2,000, is what Bob told me on Thursday or Friday. So, from us, and then Rotary, they have a grant into Rotary for, I think, $5,000 as well. So, but, you know, and I just,
I mean, the feasibility study is not to determine whether to build a bridge or build a tunnel. The feasibility study is to determine what the best way to get across the road is, period, right?
I believe so.
And how much that's going to cost?
yeah, and how it might be impacted by the dam process that's going on as well. So, yeah, so there's you know, so it is, but of course, as you could imagine, some county commissioners will be attracted to that project because it links the trails to the south end of the county, you know, and through the Education Reserve. The next step after the Education Reserve is hooking up to the Kingsley Trail. So there will be some interest in that, I would guess. But my point to Bob was, you know, I don't want to, we shouldn't see the city with a request for TART, a volunteer with a request for TART, and then TART with a request from TART. TART should be the lead and should say, these are our priorities, and Bob agrees with that. So they're going to come talk to you next week about this and get some idea, but, you know, I also want him to talk about the West Boardman Lake Trail, because I think, you know, you need to see all those things together. I don't want you to see a request, and then a month later, the city comes in with a request for $150,000. You need to be able to think about all of them together. So that's what we're going to do next week.
Chris?
Well, thank you for that clarification. When I first read this and I saw that they're talking about whether or not to build a bridge or to tunnel, I looked at that and I went, who in their right mind would tunnel? I mean, if you take a look at the expense of tunneling under a road versus building a bridge over it, which I happened to have done after I got the memo, no one would choose tunneling. You know, the only time I think as projects move forward, the only time you really see tunneling is if an area is trying to preserve a historical building or a historical district or something to that effect. So thank you for that. Also, I'm not inclined to spend money right now on a feasibility study. I think we've studied ourselves to death here.
I know it's not popular with the community.
And you know, I too am a supporter of TART, but I would be more inclined to put money towards actually a real trail versus a feasibility study. I'm just not a supporter of feasibility studies.
I don't want I want to make sure it's clear to everybody, I'm not being critical of TART and the way they approach these things. You know, they're a volunteer organization primarily, and when they get somebody like Fred Hoisington, who's a retired engineer, to say, hey, I'll work on this project, I have an interest in it, they take advantage of those things. And of course, with the city, when the city finds out we're in a new grant cycle, you know, to get money from the state, because the work we've done on Boardman Lake has always been matched by, I think, $500,000 or $700,000 from the state. We take advantage of that. So the timing of these things aren't always great, but I still think it's important to be coordinated. So they'll come talk to you next week.
Well, we should probably note the West Boardman Lake Trail isn't the only way we get pedestrians to that intersection, into that area, correct?
The west?
Because we still get people to that area from the east side of Boardman Lake also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're on the east side of Boardman Lake, you still got to get across the river to access the trails to the south.
Yeah, there's
We
no
haven't-
access
We haven't done
there.
that yet.
Yeah.
So.
Now, there is a crosswalk, but there's no way to get from the trail on the east end, I don't think, up to the crosswalk.
The new
Does it go
bridge
all the
would
way to
be great.
Medalley? Do you know? Does it go into Medalley?
It goes into Medalley,
There's a-
but then you're pretty much stuck with, you know.
Yeah, because
the
it's hard to get to
road
that
or whatever.
crosswalk, isn't it?
Well, I just know that the road commission considered pedestrian crossings at the time that they were reconfiguring the whole Logan's Landing intersection area.
And there is a
So,
pedestrian
you know, there is a
crossing.
pedestrian
there
crossing
is.
there, so it's
Yeah.
not like without this bridge, tunnel, whatever they choose to do, pedestrians cannot get from the north side of South Airport Road to the south side. You know, I like the idea of being able to have access to the Nature Education Reserve and those things up for pedestrians, not motorized traffic. But in today's economy and everything else, I can't imagine wanting to spend money for a feasibility study of how they get across the road, because there absolutely is a way to get across the road right now.
And has any of the other entities stepped forward with
The city has agreed, and
No, I
Oh,
don't
no,
think
they
the
haven't.
city has not agreed.
Oh, no, they have not.
To spend the $2,000?
No.
Well, my understanding was, from Bob Otwell, was that that's under the purview of the city manager and up to $2,000.
That's possible.
And he had
but
agreed to do it.
However, I think that the city manager recently got a telephone call from one of the newly elected commissioners.
Oh,
And it's going to be put on the agenda
Okay.
for discussion.
I mean, it's not a lot of money, but
Yeah, yes. Well, anyway, that's an update on that, and Tart will come talk to you about that next week. Go on, Jason.
Okay.
The next item, Commissioner Richardson's asked a couple times about the track lights.
right.
And this is what I've put in your packet is simply a informative piece. Just to let you know, right now, lights are coming on at 5 a.m., off at 7 a.m. in the morning, come on at 5 p.m., and they're off at 11 o'clock in the evening. Approximate cost to the county is $5,500. Those lights are not on a separate meter, and this is information that I've received from Facilities Management.
Danny got those numbers for you?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be the only person, concerned about this, and I probably am. I did go and walk the loop at night a few days ago, because I hadn't done that. And the lights are very nice. I mean, the lights are close enough, they're about 75 feet apart. They're close enough together that the light on the path is pretty much continuous. I mean, there aren't really dark spots between the lights. And even I was out about, 8 or 9 o'clock, I guess, and there were still about 8 or 10 people using the trail when I was walking my dog around there. I don't know that we need 24-hour lighting. I would like to see, I would like to think about possibly extending the timer, especially in the warm weather months, a little later.
Maybe midnight or something like
Yeah,
that?
maybe midnight or even 1, just because, it doesn't get dark till 10, and, people are out later anyway.
Can we vary that, Jason, like do parts of the year?
Yeah.
At a certain time they shut off
The
and?
timers are readjusted
I mean, just
4 times a year.
a combination of security and also just that people do, will use the trail and, or the walk, whatever you want to call it.
We'll look at that. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, it's,
Okay. Does that satisfy everybody? We can move on. Twin Lakes.
Next item is the Twin Lakes project. This is something I brought up with the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I have to apologize about 2 things. There was a typo on the second page. The last 2 lines where it says Parks and Rec Commission votes to allow, that shouldn't have made this addition of this information piece, so my sincerest apologies.
does that mean the Parks and Rec was not voted then?
The Parks and Rec did not vote. They deferred.
That says they
The Parks and
deferred.
Rec Board took this issue up,
They discussed
and they
this
deferred it
issue.
to you.
Deferred it to this committee.
Yes?
Yes, the reason, if I may,
Sure.
the reason for that was we did not have verification at the Parks and Rec Board meeting that the Kellogg grant would indeed be in danger if we didn't spend this money. And we asked for that verification from the director.
And I was called out of town, a family emergency last week. I didn't have an opportunity to get that answer.
There was,
So we don't have verification yet?
We don't have verification. I'll be able to make that call today. One of the issues when this was originally presented, the dock system, which is what we have a deficit for, the dock system was a major part of this project. This project was marketed as an opportunity for people in wheelchairs to get into and onto the water, to participate in swimming activities and kayak and canoeing activities. So the dock was a major selling point for this project when it went to the Kellogg Foundation, when it went to Rotary Charities, and when it went to our other funding agencies. So we're at an $86,894 deficit right now for this project. This project, we've kind of broken it into phases, and I'm still pursuing grant funding for the dock project. I've heard of some additional funding possibly through the federal government for disabilities, and I'll be pursuing that today, as well as a DTE Foundation grant. DTE in the past, from a state's perspective, has been very helpful to municipal parks and recreation entities. So we'll be pursuing a grant through that resource, as well as there are a couple of other smaller grants to help make up. So what I'm asking is that we can utilize, I guess what I'm asking for is worst-case scenario, if we could utilize the Parks and Recreation fund balance to make up the deficit for this project. The dock system is where we're going to fall into a funding deficit, because we do have enough cash on hand, enough funds on hand to pay for the Hallmark construction project, or the Hallmark construction portion, which is the largest construction portion. The dock system would be a second contract that I haven't even brought to you guys yet. It's about $160,000. And the dock project, they anticipated installing in either the winter or in the spring, and it's a floating dock system. So that's what I'm asking. I'm asking to know that, worst-case scenario, we can utilize the fund balance. We will still pursue grants, and I'll still try to pursue grants for the entirety of this project.
Okay, Chris?
There were a number of concerns that were expressed at Parks and Rec, and one of them was that if the county board agrees to spend these funds, it could endanger future grant opportunities. There was a concern that grants might not be awarded to a project that already has got funds set aside for it. Again, there was certainly a concern about the Kellogg grant. I heard from the Parks and Rec Board commissioners that if the Kellogg grant was in jeopardy, they would have no problem using these funds. But if the Kellogg grant is not in jeopardy, there was extreme hesitation to go ahead and use these funds. With the economy such as it is, plus we have, from all indications, a wonderful new aquatics director, and I expressed a concern that I wanted the aquatics director to have some money to work with to start building programs to move the Lutra report ahead and get the Easling pool to be self-sustaining. So there were a lot of different concerns, which is why the Parks Commission chose not to take action.
Okay, according to my math, I guess if you subtract the $86,000, you have fund balance of $138,560, and according to Dean Bott, you have an acceptable percentage of fund balance. What is that acceptable percentage, Dennis, do you know?
Well, I mean, acceptable is between 10 and 20%. What's the budget for this department?
This department's right around $800,000.
So
So we're about
80,000 would be 10%, so,
Or 120 would be 15.
yeah, 15%. I agree with Commissioner Maxbauer about the issue of having some money available for, future things that we may need to do. I will say this, though, whether Kellogg whether our grant would be a jeopardy or not with Kellogg, I would be concerned that future grants might be in jeopardy with Kellogg if we don't do what we said with the money that they gave us for this grant. So that's something that is a concern to me, because, we got into this with Tim before Tim left, and remember, Tim promised us he would find this money. And, in fairness, we found, $400,000 or $500,000 of grants, so we got a lot of grant money for the project, and I also agree with Commissioner Maxbauer, pretty much, except for the federal government, okay, if we spend this money, which really we want to do now, it's not like we're going to wait till, 6 months or a year from now to spend it, the likelihood of getting another grant is very slim. Why would people give us a grant if we already have the money? That's typically the way it goes. Unless we make it like an internal loan and then later forgive it if we don't get another grant. That might be one option to give us a little more teeth if we go ask people for money. Say, county just made us a loan and we got to pay it back. That would be one option. But, so I agree that, the likelihood of that is not great. But I also think we got to finish this project off. And so if you're going to do it, and I really don't, I would recommend you go ahead with this. But I might suggest to you that you consider doing it as a loan. And you say, we're loaning you the money while you go seek grants. It may kill the possibility of getting another grant, but at least it leaves some option open. But I think you got to finish the project. That would be my thought.
Ross?
What's the, I'm trying to think of the right term, drop dead date or whatever. I mean, you say the dock's already been partially fabricated, right?
been partially fabricated without a PO or without a contract between us and Easy Dock.
So we haven't paid them any money or anything?
Correct.
Okay, and is it possible we could delay this for a month or so while we wait to see if, anything more comes through in the grant process, or is anything going to happen that quickly?
That's a reasonable,
Request, I think.
that's a reasonable request, considering they didn't anticipate installing this dock system until
Will that give,
winter or
will that give you
spring.
time to investigate this federal money?
Yes.
And then that would also give you time, I guess you have to come up with some sort of contract with Easy Dock, right?
Correct.
And that'll also give you time to do that, to bring that forward for approval, and then we can review this a month from now and figure out where we're
Yeah,
at.
that's a good idea, and
I want to ensure that we have the funding before we enter into an
Right.
agreement with Easy Dock.
that would also give us a chance, after he looks into the federal grant, to maybe make some calls to Levin and Camp and Stabenow to see if we can get some kind of support from them. Maybe there's a way to kind of help that federal money along, so
Yeah.
we could do that. You haven't made those calls? No.
Yes, Sonny?
Okay, first, I guess I'm compelled to make sure everyone remembers that I'm doing a portion of this project for Hallmark Construction. Has nothing to do with this dock, but, as Jason identified, Hallmark's contract is being fulfilled. My one thought on this project is the fact that we're not going to want the dock installed until spring. There would be no reason to put it in now, or probably even to take delivery of it on the site and take the opportunity to have it damaged or something through the snow and the ice project. So I guess my suggestion would be that we table this commitment until, if nothing else, we finish the 2009 budget year and find out what our fund balances actually are, in fact, are. I think we're all projecting where our numbers are going to be.
Can we wait 2 months?
It's
Yeah, we can. One of
it's
the-
November now, so this board wouldn't, even if we made the approval now, this board wouldn't ratify it until the end of, the week of Thanksgiving, and when we meet again.
No, that wasn't, my concern is that when you say till we see what the year-end fund balance looks like, we don't close out till February. And I was hoping I would not like us to wait that long, because I don't know how long the construction of this takes, so that we can get it in the spring.
We wouldn't take delivery on this until at least the 1st of May.
One of the original
Yeah, but
intents
if
of
they have to
Easy Dock
construct it.
was to do a winter installation, set it up on the ice and let it melt into the lake.
Because this is a floating process, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I didn't understand that until Jason explained it to me.
What you do is you set the anchors on the ice so you can get true measurements about the location. And then as the ice melts, the anchors drop to the bottom. And then you secure the floating dock and the turnbuckles to hold it in place from that point.
We don't have any problem with waiting and reporting back to you at Physical Resources next month. I think that makes good sense.
Okay, why don't we just my suggestion would be we just review it then
Yeah,
and see where we're at. I'm certainly not opposed to the idea of, spending the fund balance if that's what it takes, but if there's grant money out there, let's try to get that first, so.
I am certainly in favor of, it's been a 5-year planning process, this thing's been going on and on, I think I'd like to bring it to a close, but I'd also like the Park and Recs Commission to sign off on it. I frankly think that, I don't want to usurp their authority, I think they should have a voice in this, and I don't see any problem with waiting, and I think using the fund balance is appropriate at this point also to get this done, and moved on to other projects that can get more grant money.
The other piece, I think, once this project is completed, we really need to talk about how we market that facility to the groups that this thing is designed for. Because it's going to be a beautiful facility when it's over and done with, and we need to do a better job of marketing it and getting user groups in there that will bring us revenue for using it.
That's true of all of our parks.
And all of our parks. But
More
this one comes out really fast because of the investment that we've made to meet the needs of specific groups and the other amenities on that facility.
Okay, so we've tabled this essentially.
And my final piece for you is an easement at Twin Lakes for Consumers Energy to upgrade some of the power lines that run along the front side run along the south edge of Twin Lakes, along North Long Lake Road. This is an item that has been approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission, and they've moved it on to the Physical Resources Committee.
Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize an easement to Consumers Energy along North Long Lake Road at Twin Lakes Park.
I'll second it for
Any discussion?
purposes of discussion, yeah. Okay, I'm not sure I quite understand. It's under Exhibit B, it says a 20-foot wide strip of land being 15 feet on the roadside and 5 feet on the backside. Can you,
Of this center line. So they have, up on the post, they have brackets attached to the post that hold the power lines. And they're cantilevered out closer to the road. So the center line, in my understanding of this, is where the center line of the easement would be. So 5
Okay.
feet on the backside of that would be where the pole is, and where the bracket's attached.
okay, so we're talking about from the edge of the road, we're talking 20 feet, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. This would minimally affect the trees along the south edge of Twin Lakes. This is the second easement that Consumers has brought to the Parks and Rec Commission on this issue. The first one would have involved cutting down and limbing of several trees along Twin Lakes.
This is right on the road, though.
Correct.
Okay.
So when you say minimal, you say, what, we may take a couple trees, but generally not, or?
Sounds like their intent is just to limb a few less than 5 trees, is my understanding.
Okay.
And the one thing you need to remember is Grand Traverse County's road frontage coming through that curve is very minimal, because Chaz McCall has the piece where his log cabin's down in the hollow. And then shortly after we come past the driveway, it becomes Jim Gallagher's property. So, when you're in Twin Lakes Park and you're looking back toward North Long Lake Road on that ridge that's up above, that's Jim Gallagher's property. It's not Grand Traverse County property. If you look up behind where
So
the...
it's just a narrow
Right,
strip.
so our frontage on North Long Lake Road per se is very minimal right there, because, like I say, if you're down in the park, and you're looking back toward where the Olson building is and where the A-frame came out, that property that you're looking at there on that ridge is actually Jim Gallagher's property, not ours.
This is upgrading the utilities, though.
Correct.
And
Well,
so,
they've upgraded all along North Long Lake
And
Road.
this
So-
is, phase 1 of the project was from Herkner Road to our neighbors to the southeast. And then this second phase will start at the neighbors to the southeast and continue towards Gray Road.
so this is, my point is that this provides no direct benefit to us at Twin Lakes.
Not necessarily to us at Twin Lakes, but it does benefit the customer, or the citizens.
There's no cost. We're not being paid anything for this
Correct.
easement.
Correct.
But there's a public purpose for the easement. So, we always like to see that there's a public purpose or that we get some benefit for it, so
Chris?
I think,
Sorry.
Jason, if we don't grant this easement, what will Consumers do?
They'll have to propose another option, or they may approach us with another easement in order to get these lines across, or to upgrade these lines. One of the issues they're having with the upgrading in lines, currently, they're smaller lines that go over the north edge of South Twin Lake, which is the southern lake of the Twin Lakes. Our property is on North Twin Lake. What they're trying to do is trying to eliminate going over the southern, or the northern tip of South Long Lake and taking it to the north side of the road.
So the drawing we were given, so that line that cuts across South Twin Lake, that's the current line?
That's the current line, correct.
And then the heavy black line would be the new line.
the proposed.
Correct.
So aesthetically, it'd be a big improvement. I mean, rather than having,
Except that it's not county property down there on South Twin Lake.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
aesthetically, it's not going to be an improvement for our park necessarily, because currently the line's kind of hidden over the northern edge of South Twin Lake.
Do you actually believe you'll even be able to see that line once you're down into the campus?
Once you're in the campus, no, but it may affect the aesthetics of driving by
Yeah, that would be it.
Twin Lakes.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the easements, what's the numbers? Anyway, as stated, easements 100, 421, 2, 3, 6, 6, and 109, 93074 as presented. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Okay, have a roll call vote, please, Chris?
Hooper,
Yes.
Richardson,
I'm going to vote yes to move it along, but I'm still not sure about it, honestly, but for the
Wheeler.
purpose.
Yes.
Axbauer.
No.
Okay, motion carries. And any further questions for our director?
No, but I do have a comment. Do tell Rob Wiley how much people were appreciating his hot cider and pumpkin donuts.
I will.
He did that at his own expense, and I ran over there one morning to grab something out of my locker. I wasn't swimming, but I saw the hot cider and the pumpkin donuts, and
Couldn't resist?
that's right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Jason.
thank you. And now we have a presentation by MSU. E.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Swaney. As Bruce said, I'm here to report on MSUE programs. I've been associated with them for about a year as a VISTA person. It's been a very good experience. I've really enjoyed it. My charge was to bring after-school programs to the various schools here. And most of my work has been centered on West Middle School. I put together two programs. The first is from 4-H's Science, Engineering, and Technology group, and it had to do with aerospace. I've got a background of about 8 years at the Manned Spacecraft Center, so it felt very good to work with kids in this area. What it really does in both of these programs is it allows us to give the kids hands-on experience with various aspects that they're studying in school. And I've always believed that hands-on is one of the better ways of learning. So the first program, the aerospace program, dealt with various aerospace subjects, planes, and the science involved with that, gliders. We eventually got into rockets, and the kids really lit up at that point. In fact, we were up at West Middle School when they were redoing all of their landscaping and roads and things, and what I noticed is that rockets don't only attract kids, they attract people that are a little older than kids, because all of the people working on the landscaping came over to watch the kids launch their rockets. So we fooled the kids. They thought we were just there to have fun, but when they left, they had some basic knowledge of trigonometry. They had some ideas of what a parabolic curve looked like as opposed to something with a lesser angle, and I think it was very successful. I would have liked to have had more kids. We had about between 20 and 25 kids involved with that, but I saw it as a very good learning experience, and I hope that we can continue to add that type of thing to the learning experience of our kids. The second item, gardening, is an effort that's been going on for a little more than a year. Actually, it goes back before that, but for our purposes, a little more than a year. And I just went to a conference over the weekend about school and community gardening. And I didn't realize just how extensive it is, but there is a lot going on in the state with community gardens, with school gardens. A lot of good ideas. They're in the process of turning Flint back into an agricultural center. I think they've got about a third of their land vacant, and they're actively plowing, planting, and so that's a big project. But we started again at West Middle School trying to teach kids where their food came from and what it means to have healthy food and why you want to have healthy food and what it does for your life, quality of life. And the interest was quite great, and I was surprised at how citified we've become, because very few kids understood much about gardening. Again, we had a lot of fun doing it. We built some raised beds, and we built some cold frames, and we planted various crops. The downside of it is I found out that when school ends, everyone disappears. So I ended up tending the gardens over the summer, but we'll come up with a better solution next year. Kids came out in good numbers and planted, and they learned. They have a nutritionist teacher there, and so she was able to take some of their produce into her class. And I believe a very successful program. This had more of a far-reaching effect. We probably worked with about 60 kids over the period of this. It was interesting to see when we came back in the fall, we still had a few little produce that was still growing, and I purposely told the kids to go out and harvest the potatoes. Well, they came back after a few minutes and said, "Mr. Swaney, there are no potatoes."
Didn't see any.
I gotta dig.
Couldn't see any.
And that was about the effect of what I thought would happen. We went back and we found them. They were there. They had to dig a little bit. But, so all in all, these are two programs that 4-H has provided that I think have tremendous value. We're expanding the gardening. We've renovated a garden at Central Grade School. That's a beautiful thing. It's worth walking through. A lot of work has gone into it, and the kids are very excited about bringing it back to life and the cycles involved in growing. And slowly we hope to expand this experience to more elementary schools, to more kids. I think it's an important part of their learning. Questions? Comments? Donations?
We did that already.
Yes.
I also sit on the Traverse City Planning Commission, and this last few months or so, we did, amend our rules or whatever, but community gardens are now, allowed pretty much anywhere in the city, so I don't know if that helps any of the kind of things you're trying to do, but we're trying to encourage the idea of, people using community gardens on, vacant land or whatever, so.
Did you allow chickens too? Is that?
Oh, yeah, we allow chickens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was a really big subject at the conference, getting chickens back into the cities. A gentleman from Toledo said, well, we had it easy because they forgot to amend the law. That there was actually, the law was very old, and it allowed chickens. So he said, we just kept our mouth shut and thanked people every chance we got and raised chickens. A woman in Detroit was into beekeeping, and she's started having honey, producing honey. So I don't know where it goes, but I think what I see of it is a very healthy direction to go in.
Yeah, bees go very well with gardens.
Pardon?
Bees go very well with
They're
gardens.
handy.
They don't go very well with me. They require
I know,
shots.
but they are dangerous.
I know the one thing the governor did when she reinstated the funding to MSU Extension was she talked about the necessity of alternative energies and technologies. Now, I see you have engineering and technology involved in this. Are we going to be looking at expanding that to maybe include some of that alternative energies research and technology?
One of the things that the staff at West is very high on, and I want to say that we've gotten tremendous cooperation from teachers and staff at the schools. They're really into these projects, but we plan to put a greenhouse up there. And almost immediately, someone came forward and said, let's see if we can use alternative energy to heat it. They want to look at solar panels and maybe a wind spire on the roof or whatever it may be. So there are certainly individuals that would like to incorporate various alternative energy ideas into what they're doing, so.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you.
Jerry.
And now we have time for public comment. Seeing none, do you have any unfinished business? All right, then let's have the administrator's report.
I mentioned some of these to commissioners, so I apologize if it's repetitive, but we are looking into some safety issues at the dam in terms of operational issues for our employees. We're working on that now, and of course, we're trying to balance not spending a great deal of money out there with safety for our employees. So it's an issue that we're working on, and I'll have more to report to you later on that. We have 4 tentative agreements on next year's wages for contracts that I will be bringing to L&A tomorrow. And then we still have, I think, 5 or 6 more that are open. 6 more, 3 of which I believe are full contracts that we're working on that expire at the end of the, 3 expire at the end of this year, so we're working on those now too. We were able to talk with a headhunter who has agreed to give us, this on the HR director, has agreed to give us some blanked out resumes of people that she feels would be qualified for our position. Arlene's back tomorrow, and Arlene will be going over those tomorrow to see kind of how they size up with the ones that we currently have. And if they do, and it's beneficial, then we'll be coming back to you to talk about that, hiring the headhunter. If not, then in the next couple of weeks, we'll be making a recommendation to you about hiring. I met with the city manager to talk about the senior center collaboration and the possible millage and how we would do the technical aspects of that. We made great progress in terms of how we would do the staffing. I think we worked out all the details about the maintenance of the area, and I think we all addressed all the questions pretty much you had, Commissioner. We're still working on the staffing issue in terms of some of the logistics of that because of the retirements and the health insurance and things like that, but I think in the next couple of weeks we'll have a tentative agreement. But Ben and I both hope, and I talked to Commissioner Richardson, and I think he agrees, the idea here would be to have a contract between the city, a draft tentative contract between the city and the county that lays out all the terms prior to the time that there'd be a millage that would go out to the public. So I feel real good about it. We made great progress, and I don't think there are going to be any issues between Ben and I to have something for you. The implementation team continues their work. I wanted to mention again that we will be moving the implementation team for the dams removal meeting from the 19th to the 25th at 1 o'clock in this room. We're clarifying the duties and the roles, and really the project is coming down into 2 different kind of 2 distinct tracks, but they will move along concurrently. Ben Bifus, the city manager, and I are, of course, real adamant on your behalf and the city's behalf that we continue moving forward with the deconstruction, and that's the main focus. But at the same time, there will be a group of not-for-profits and others who will move forward with developing a 50-year management plan for that river valley. How are we going to manage that whole valley? What's it going to look like? How's it going to develop with our nature education reserve and things like that? Those are going to kind of run concurrently. Excuse me. And the reason that's important is because that's the planning piece of it is usually something that there's no money for and there's less interest. But they're pretty convinced, Rotary and others are pretty convinced that with the momentum that we have going here about the removal of the dams, there will be a lot of private foundations that will be interested in funding the long-term planning picture for the river valley. So we want to kind of take advantage of that now, which will ease the pressure on anybody else later to have to take care of a management plan. So they're going to kind of move concurrently, and we're making sure we've got real clear direction on who's going to do what. It appears that the Army Corps will do the engineering and the design at this point, and I will be bringing a letter to you next week that we need a letter from the city and the county requesting them to do that work on our behalf. So I'll be bringing a letter to you. It makes no financial commitment on your part, but it says if we move to the construction phase, we're responsible for 35% of the cost of that, which we've always been. But we're pretty comfortable that 35% will either be potentially waived, because there is some things we can do legislatively to get it waived, or it'll be covered by our in-kind work and grants and foundation monies that come in to support that, as well as we've been told that the vast majority of the money that we spent on the implementation study, the Boardman River Dam study, will be able to be credited towards that, so.
Well,
I've got
the environmental impact study and all of that had to.
A lot of that will be used for the new study.
I've got a question on the dams, Dennis.
Yep.
On the radio earlier last week, I'm sorry, late last week, Mr. Peterson said that his equipment is still in the dams and he could generate power within 30 days. I was under the impression... I'm sorry?
He's in Sabin yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, he still has some equipment at Boardman. They're not for generating power. He's got the rakes and things like that. But yeah, Commissioner, we've heard that too, and he still does have the turbine in Sabin.
Okay.
So that's what Dick was saying.
All right.
But no, it's absolutely impossible that he could be running in 30 days. First of all, you'd have to go through the $900,000 FERC process, and
yeah.
that, I'm told, could take anywhere from a year to 2 years for that process alone. So while he may physically be able to get them cranked up and started, they can't.
I just wondered when he said his equipment was still there, I was under the impression that you had
Well-
worked with him to start removing it.
Oh, and we have, and I mentioned, he did a really nice job of getting the turbine out of Boardman Dam, which was our main concern because we wanted to open that penstock. But he hasn't gone back to Sabin to take the turbine out of Sabin, and I'm going to need to get back on him too. He's down in Arizona, or he was the
Yes.
last couple weeks, so I'm going to have to get back on him to get that out of there because he has not done anything with.
His intent, obviously, is to keep the water muddied and controversial, evidently.
But also, I did not hear the shows, but of course, several commissioners did, including the chairman, and so we're gonna go on Norm Jones' show today at 10. Dick and I are.
Good.
Because I think from what I understand, there's a lot of misconceptions about where we're at in the process and what's being done. So we're gonna go on there and try to answer some questions and
Good.
try to set the facts straight if there's any confusion.
It sounded like we were the bad guys.
Oh, yeah.
They should have the other side of the story.
Okay. Next item is I'm working with Ben Bifus, the city manager, on renewing the building code arrangement. Remember, we have a contract with the city to do building codes enforcement on their behalf. Ben has indicated there's a desire to continue that process and have the county do that work, which we're always happy to do because it shows intergovernmental collaboration and those kinds of things. There's no cost to the city directly because all they do is they just accept the same fee schedule that we have throughout the rest of the county, and then we do all the inspections. So Ben and I are working on that contract, and hopefully we'll have it to you and the city here in the next month or so. Just an update, we have a ruling from Al Schneider that we can no longer have a contract, that we should not have a contract with our medical examiner, Dr. Houghton, that under the statute, it's Al's belief that the medical examiner needs to be an employee of the county. So we are working with Al and the health department to make that person an employee of the county.
Does he want to be an employee?
Pardon?
Does he want to be an employee?
Well, I think he prefers a contract, but he's willing to do that. So I just wanted you to know that's been a little fly in the ointment. You approved a contract, and Al says, when he saw the contract, he says, no, this should be an employee. So we're working through that, and we're trying to meet Al's requirements, and I think we're going to be able to do it without much trouble, but I wanted you to be aware. As I told you, Norm Jones, we're doing that today. Last thing I want to mention to you, and this is one of those intriguing things that are fun to work on, and they're not immediate, but I met with the Emmett County Administrator last week, who is out on bids for health insurance as well, and we had a nice discussion about looking at investigating whether there would be a benefit to a consortium of northwestern Michigan counties coming together to bid health insurance, and whether there'd be any financial benefit to us doing that together. So that's kind of an intriguing thing, and I believe we're community rated. But we're going to be looking into that, and I wanted you to be aware of that. You know, he does several, just like we do things with Leelanau County, and we have done things with Antrim in the past. He does things up there with Sheboygan County and with Charlevoix County from time to time. And so it's just all very preliminary, but I think it's kind of I think it could be kind of exciting and worth looking into. So we're going to look at that, because obviously if we can man together here and raise our numbers, we probably have a better chance of getting better rates. So I wanted to let you know that we're going to be investigating that over the next months.
And that would be a direct negotiation with the insurance provider, right?
Well, probably what we do is if we put a consortium together, we would bid it, you know, as a consortium,
Yeah.
you know, and then try to get rates directly, yes. That would be the idea. So that's my report. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Any questions? Okay. Oh, sorry.
The only other thing, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention earlier, last week, the steering committee, if you will, for the solid waste plan received the report back from GBB. Basically, what we heard from them is that our current intergovernmental contracts and our current ordinance 17, while they, certainly have their share of questionable issues, give us all of the powers that we need to franchise and negotiate contracts on behalf of the citizens of this community for solid waste pickup. As some of us have been around long enough to know that this is where we were in 2001, 2002, when we went out and tried to bid countywide pickup, and the local entities pretty much beat us up very badly. But it's kind of interesting. Now it's their idea, so it's okay. So
Well, but the difference here is this would be some of the local communities saying they want it, as opposed to us telling everybody they have to have it.
Right, and we're still moving forward. He took information the other day, and we should see a final proposal the 25th, the 19th of this month. The 19th of November, he's coming back with the final draft of that documentation.
And speaking at least tangentially to that issue, there was a piece in the newspaper this morning that a tipping fee of $7.50 per ton is being proposed statewide.
Oh, really?
I think possibly by Dan Scripps. So I have no idea where that's going, but I thought it was sort of curious.
Is there a statewide fee right now, or?
I've been expecting that for a long time, just so they can get the Canadian trash. They're bringing that in for free.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So it'll be interesting. Solid waste resource recovery meeting the other night was a great time, but
Wasn't it though?
we've taken this under discussion, and we're going to look specifically, once this recommendation comes back, specifically as to how we would implement the current intergovernmental contracts to allow us to bid this.
Well, and we have to remember too, our intergovernmental contracts
Are all up for
expire
renewal.
at the end. I think the way the language is written though, that the local units have the ability to opt out if they want. Otherwise, they're renewed, correct?
They're automatic
Yeah, they're up next year. All of our
Contracts.
So
contracts.
next year, you mean the first of
2010, end of 2010.
End of 2010,
Yes.
okay.
Only been new for both room. Okay, anything else? All right,
Move to
entertain
adjourn.
a motion. We have a motion
I'll
to
be
adjourn.
gone now, thank you.
Okay. Not so bad.